Let's talk a little Ottawa Senators now as Ian Mendes, TSN 1200 host, joining us now. Ian, I just got to ask, goosebumps when all of that was going down from goal 1 to goal 3?
Yeah, you know what, Andy? It was like, goal 1 went in the first period, and we're like, oh, wow, what a great story. Can't wait to talk to Bobby after the game. This is going to be great. And then goals 2 and 3 happened so quickly back-to-back that you almost you didn't have time to realize what was going on. And I'll tell you, I'm fortunate enough to be able to write quite a bit for TSN.ca. And I came home last night and I interviewed Bobby as part of the scrum. And I came home and I transcribed everything. And Andy and Poulin, I sat there staring at my laptop for 20, 30 minutes. Like, where do you even begin? It was just one of those things where I'm not sure that if you sold the movie rights to this about Bobby Ryan's story, that a Hollywood company would buy it, because I think they'd say, no, sorry, that's too cliche. There's no way a guy in his first game back at home after being away for 3 months for alcohol abuse is going to score a hat trick. I'm sorry, that stuff just doesn't happen. And then there it was playing out in front of our eyes last night.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think everyone was rooting for him. We know Bobby has bared his soul before, right? We go back a few years and, talking about his dad and how he had to grow up with that. And he's not shy to open up. Has he ever talked about how that's just also helped him, right? Just kind of being able to be open, to talk to people. How have you noticed that being different, in him, say, maybe to, compared to other people?
Yeah, it's the strangest thing, Andy. And I think for people who aren't overly familiar with Bobby's complicated childhood, I mean, the kind of the Coles Notes version is, imagine you grow up in New Jersey as Bobby did, and your father is accused of and actually wanted on a warrant for domestic abuse for assaulting your mom. And to flee the cops, you move to the other side of the country, and you move in California. You change your name. You change your identity, and yet you're always probably looking behind you, wondering, is somebody stepping closer to us? Is this all going to end? And imagine that is the backdrop of your childhood. And by the way, you just happen to be a world-class hockey player and get drafted in the National Hockey League, and you're always probably thinking, will it catch up to me? Will all of this come out? And Bobby was very open about telling his story many years ago, and I think that's helped. But I thought what was really interesting too, Andy, is he admitted when he spoke to us last Friday, he said that essentially he needs to stop and turn around and maybe face some of those demons from his childhood, and he needs to put some things to rest. And I think it was a great reminder of, even though Bobby Ryan got a $50 million contract, people always think that maybe money solves your problems. You can have money and you don't have these issues. I think it's a great reminder that behind the $50 million hockey player is a vulnerable human being. And I think everybody can kind of empathize with that.
Ian, I was in Anaheim working as a scout when we drafted Bobby Ryan, and through his first early years and then 4 straight 30-goal years as the player that Ottawa traded for, right after the departure of Daniel Alfredson, and all of a sudden it was a big trade and gave up significant assets to get Bobby Ryan. And it worked early in Ottawa, and then it didn't work. And it not only didn't work, as a player, he really fell off the face of the game. And, I knew from his early days how talented he was and how much he could bring, and he had injuries. But we didn't know about this battle that was going on. And, and it's gone on now, as he's admitted, for 3 or 4 or 5 years. There could be a lot of hockey left in Bobby Ryan.
Yeah, isn't it remarkable, Poulin, when you think about there's no way in the world you could have convinced me even a month ago that Bobby Ryan had a lot of tread left on the tire, so to speak, right? He's 32. He's on the quote-unquote wrong side of 30 for a professional hockey player of his skill set. And yet last night, and even if you watched it, and then probably people didn't watch it, but he made his return on Tuesday in Nashville. He had a couple of grade A scoring chances. He looks like he's got a little bit of jump in his step. And I thought what was really neat was yesterday, they put him on a line with Josh Norris and Brady Tkachuk. And those are 2 young American kids who admitted that they looked up to Bobby Ryan. That's the type of guy that they want to be in the National Hockey League, with that type of pedigree. And so to be on that line and all of a sudden, and I don't think anyone's expecting, will Bobby be a 30-goal scorer again in the National Hockey League? But I think there was a glimpse of it last night, Pooley, that maybe the hands are there. And maybe there's an opportunity for him to contribute. Probably not as a a guy warranting his $7 million salary, but that's besides the point. I think everybody's cheering for the human being and feeling like maybe there's a spot for him here next season.
You know, I think of another player in Montreal, Nate Thompson, that very publicly went through the program as well, or afterwards came out, and how well he's playing at age 34, and apparently he reached out to Bobby Ryan as well. And Bobby Ryan was surprised by some of the people that reached out to him that he had no idea they would have had issues or gone through the program as private as it is. And, you know, and he's still a young guy. I saw the talent and the big-time talent that he was, but think of another attachment to the start of his career. He was a coin flip with Sidney Crosby. It's pretty amazing in the draft. I mean, it was an Anaheim-Pittsburgh coin flip for the number 1 pick in the draft.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's amazing. We were on the 10-year anniversary of Sid's golden goal, and you sometimes forget Bobby was on the other side. Bobby played for Team USA in that game. He could have had a gold medal just as easily if luck had gone his way. And I thought, you know what's interesting too, you mentioned the idea that Nate Thompson had reached out to him. The other guy that Bobby talked to us about last night a little bit was Sheldon Surrey. And Sheldon, I think, had gone through a little bit of substance abuse as well, and reached out to Bobby and was kind of one of those sounding boards. And I think what was great is that the hockey community really rallied around him. And I think in this day and age, it's been such a nice shift to see the destigmatization of whether it's alcohol abuse or drug abuse, and understand that there's reasons behind it. There's issues behind it. And yeah, maybe people make selfish choices, but there's a reason behind it. And I think the society and the hockey culture is a lot more tolerant of this now than probably it was 15 or 20 years ago.
Yeah, 100%. And I know there's a couple teams in the NHL, and one being the Calgary Flames, because we've had Brian McGrattan on the show, and you would know him well from his days in Ottawa, but they employ former players who also have been through some things. So if you don't want to go to your coach, if you don't feel comfortable going to management, it's always easier to go to a former player. You just feel that they've been there, done that, like with you, and they understand. And I think it's so great that you're starting to see the NHL not just have this program, but that they also are now employing former players to be part of their team, where if a player wants to go talk to somebody, they can go talk to him, and management doesn't even know about it. And you can get that kind of help. Ian Mendes joining us here on Leafs Lunch. How are things going as well, though, in Sens land? Last time we spoke, I know we used the word that I think scares everybody, no matter what you do in life, and that's called apathy. But here I am looking at Ottawa, and I'm seeing stories, of Chris Phillips and the jersey retirement and fans coming out for that. Obviously, Bobby Ryan, the feel-good story. Just what is the vibe out in Ottawa right now when it does come to this team, and how the organization is treating current and former players?
Well, I think what was really tough last night, guys, is that the announced attendance was about 12,000. And you think about that in a building that seats about 18, and you had a Canadian team in there in Vancouver, and you had 12,000 people. For a night that, honestly, I think 5, 10, 15 years from now, people will remember the night Bobby Ryan came back home and scored a hat trick, and you didn't, have close to a sellout. So that part will always, kind of sting a little bit. I think when you kind of juxtapose the storyline of Bobby, and then you measure that against the apathy in the marketplace, it doesn't quite jive. But what it does is I think it reminds you of the passion in the marketplace, and understand that maybe, just maybe, for an organization, I think the problem here, Ottawa hasn't had a soul, to put it bluntly here. And they need a little bit of soul. And Bobby's got that, and it's a connection with the fans, right? Like, professional sports teams, I know the Blue Jays are a great example of it. I always think of those Blue Jays teams of the early 2000s, and the Rogers Center was empty, and you were getting 10, 12,000 people. There was no connection. Like, you didn't quite connect with the team. And this is where we're at with Ottawa. There's no connection. And then Bobby has that night, and you connect with him. And the way Brady Tkachuk plays, if they can ever get him locked up, he connects with the fan base. I feel like you can slowly build this thing back, but there's no way that this is going to be an overnight solution in Ottawa to filling that building again.
Well, there is a solution, and it comes in the form of 7 picks in the first 2 rounds of the draft this year, including 3 first-rounders, conditions on one of those. But can you see a scenario where, can you even imagine when that lottery is spinning and Ottawa getting 2 of the first 3 or 2 of the first 4 or even the first 2 picks in the upcoming draft?
It is. It is the only thing. You got to remember, last year at this time, Ottawa was basically in the same spot, and didn't have its own first-round pick, if you recall, right? Because
Right.
they'd given it away to Colorado.
Right.
So think about like what a difference a year can make. So if you think year over year, the excitement level is completely different. Well, where could we be a year from now if, like you said, the lottery balls fall in the way that you want and you get Alexis Lafreniere, or you get 2 picks in the top 5 because you have San Jose's, or you get 3 picks in the top 20, or whatever it ends up being. There is the potential for this to change in a hurry. And I can't tell you how many times, in fact, on the radio station now, and in fact on the TSN broadcast, I think they got a little shtick that they're doing with Chris Cuthbert and Jamie McLennan and the gang for basically you hit the draft lottery simulator live on the air, and you see where it comes up, and then you fingers crossed that that Ottawa gets the number 1 pick.
Well, that's been known to happen in this city a couple of years ago.
Don't know what you're talking about.
And they did hit the lottery, and Brian Hayes
didn't O do
made
a lap?
it famous.
That was the last time we saw O run, I think.
That was his last workout. He did a lap at the studio.
He did a lap at the studio. Ian, really appreciate taking the time and sharing the emotions of last night.
Yeah, you bet, you guys. Always my pleasure.
Thanks, Ian.
That is Ian Mendes out in Ottawa, TSN 1200
He
host.
does a great job there.
Oh, fantastic job. And yeah, great story on Bobby Ryan. I mean, it's a great life story. Ian Mendes also talking about, he's put himself in that conversation for Bill Masterton. And I've been preaching this for a while. And I love that Ian drives it home again. And I'm going to continue to say it. I'm just so tired of athletes being used as punching bags because of money being the excuse. These are human beings who deal with they're demons just like the rest of us, and money doesn't make it better as much as you think it does.
There's a lot of background to Bobby Ryan's story.
It does not.